Okay. Here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. I'll do my intro. Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast. Podcast designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. With me today is Dr. James Kent. We go back a few years. We met, I think it may have been Nashville or Denver, or could have been Arlington. It was pretty early on.
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Okay, and you are a native-born Texan, and you own East Texas Foot and Ankle Centers. So, Dr. James, it is so good to have you on here.
Well, Tyson, I am absolutely honored to be on here. I still have your book, and this book, I highly recommend it for anybody. This is, in my opinion, the gold standard of what students need to read if they're even thinking about going into podiatry or contemplating starting their own private practice. I think I wrote a 5-star review on Amazon. I've had this book ever since I wrote it. And I went through it today just as kind of to look at it after seeing this years ago. And it's everything that you say still holds true today. It is a fantastic book. I recommend it for everybody.
And if anyone wants to know the title of the book, it's called It's No Secret There's Money in Podiatry. And what's funny about that book is I don't talk about money at any stage throughout the book.
No, not at all.
But it was one of those titles that somebody said, oh, if you put the title money in there, more people will be attracted to it.
Sure.
But the book isn't about making money. The book is about becoming a better podiatrist and having a better podiatry business. But a few things have changed since I wrote that book in 2014. I have more hair on the front cover of that book than I do now.
but that's wisdom right there.
It must be, yeah. I must have become very wise over the last 7 or so years because there's not much there now. But hey, it's easy to manage. That's what I like to say.
That's right.
So let's get on to the James Kent story. And because I always like to touch on how people came to podiatry, because I think it's really interesting for other podiatrists, who may have been around for 20 or 30 years to see there's any similarities. But I think for a lot of younger podiatrists coming through, hearing how people got into podiatry, what excited them about it and what keeps them excited about it, I think it can just open up their eyes to the possibilities of what they can do in their career. So what is the James Kent story? How did you get into podiatry?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll start with a quick story about my father. And, Tyson, I was thumbing through your book today, and I noticed that your father passed away in 1983. So I guess it's approaching 40 years. And I noticed that inside the book, it talked about, you said, I hope that my father was proud of me. Well, I can assure you right now, your father is proud of you. What you've done for the profession and what you're doing for the profession, you're giving a positive light for podiatry. That's what we need throughout the world. It's such an awesome profession. I love it. I can't say enough good things about it. If I could do it all over again, I would definitely do it over again. It's a wonderful thing. So, I'll tell you right now, your father is smiling down on you for all the great things you've done. But, my father, here's how I got started. I'm very pro-education, very pro-education. This came from my mother and my father. My parents grew up in extreme poverty. My father grew up without a toilet. Okay, so he actually had an outhouse. And my father is actually a high school dropout. So in the 1960s, when he was going to high school, he actually dropped out of high school because his parents were so poor that they could not basically afford the kids. So they're going to have to go out and they're going to have to get a job. Well, my father got a job picking cotton. Okay, that's what he did in the 1960s. He did that for 1 year, and after that,
which part of the United States did he grow up in?
He grew up out in West Texas, in the desert of West Texas. So, he grew up in extreme poverty, and after a year of picking cotton, he noticed that the people that had a thing called college degree wound up doing a little bit better than the people that did not have a college degree. And so he actually begged his high school to let him back into high school. And this was back in the days where there was really no accountability in school systems. And so he actually had to beg them to let them back in. And finally, after a while, he begged them to let him back in. And sure enough, he did go back in and he actually finished. And after that, he decided to attend a university named Texas A&M. And back then it was an all-white, all-male military college. And in the 1960s, after that, you went to Vietnam. So he actually graduated from high school, and then he graduated from A&M. Yeah. And then the Vietnam War came on, and he wound up being a soldier there, and then wound up being a teacher. And then he wound up being a school principal. Then he wound up being a school superintendent, and he wound up being a school superintendent of a major district in Texas. So he literally went from being a high school dropout to being a school superintendent with 500 employees and thousands of students under him. And he was the type of person that he would not accept students dropping out of high school. He was going to do everything in his power to get these students that were at risk of getting through from a high school diploma, because he understood what a high school dropout, the difficulty they would have in life. So of all the people to understand it, it was actually my father. And you wouldn't think a school superintendent would understand that, but he certainly did. And so that kind of brings
a lot of people too would see like a district superintendent and go, well, education has always been such a major part of their life. How could they possibly relate and understand to somebody who is thinking about dropping out of school? But because that's what he did, he could relate to him really well.
Absolutely. Very, very well. And so my parents kind of instilled to my sister and I that we're going to do the very best we can in high school. And we're you should go off to college. That was the big push.
Yeah.
You want to improve yourself. And of course, my sister did very well in school. I did very well in school. And, I decided, I'm going to major in biology. And I thought I was going to do something like chiropractic or maybe nursing or maybe a doctor. Or I thought about becoming a biology teacher and wind up following my father's footsteps and wind up going into administration, being a school superintendent, which I would have loved. I would have loved doing that just as much as podiatry. So I'm the type of person. There's a lot of things that I would enjoy. I'm not one of these people that says, you know what, podiatry is the only thing that I can do, or teaching is the only thing I can do, or real estate is the only thing I can do. I really get frustrated with doctors that say, this is my life, this is podiatry, this is the only thing that I can do. I would tell this to young doctors: try to have a couple of eggs in different baskets. That's what you do. You're more diversified than just being a podiatrist. You're also an entrepreneur in other ways. I mean, look at this podcast. This is very different than podiatry, but you do it very well. So, if young people want to get into it, you also want to say, hey, there's other things than podiatry. Keep your eyes open.
I think the advantage of doing something outside of podiatry, even if it's like, I've known people who are dentists and other professions, lawyers, who also play in a band and do pub gigs.
Sure.
They play in bars, and that's what they do on a Saturday night. And they said it's amazing. Anyone that does something outside of the profession, it's not just blinkers on, that's all you ever do.
Sure.
Something about how your brain switches on when you're doing something completely different. And for some reason, you bring some of those skills back into what you do.
Absolutely.
So I even know, doing podcasting, for example, when I first started doing it, that a lot of the times you're having a conversation with somebody and you've got to listen to the conversation, because you've got to not steer it a certain way. Well, you have to direct the conversation, but you've also got to pick up on cues when somebody says something. I'll give you a perfect example. I was listening to a podcast early on when I first started, and the guy must have obviously had these set questions that he was going to ask, like 5 set questions. Nothing was going to budge him from these 5 set questions.
Yeah.
They were set in concrete.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, as she's explaining the story, and then she mentions about, and when I went through chemotherapy, and all of a sudden I'm going, oh, she had cancer. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He went straight to the next question. So what is your favorite book? I'm like, my God, there was an opportunity there to really go off script and talk about something that was really important to her. So I find this skill, if I was in a clinical situation now, I would hear more of what the patient was saying than just maybe sometimes going through the motions of having set ideas in my head.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, you take that person, for example, having cancer, they could have talked about that, maybe had a give the person a little bit of inspiration. Like, I had cancer and I beat it, or I had cancer and I really struggled with it. And I'd like to share that story with you. That would make an awesome story. A lot of people would want to listen to that.
Or how it affected them and how did it affect the people around them? What support did they get? What support did they not get? How did they find the healthcare system with that? Yeah, there was so much that as she said it, I went, oh, this is going to go completely different angle. No, and he's still stuck straight with his set agenda. And I sometimes find podiatrists there, like say new graduates come out, they're educated a certain way by the university, and the person they work for was educated by the same university and and they haven't thought outside the box a lot.
Yeah. Oh, I agree 100%. Yeah. It's, you've got to adapt. I think you would agree with this, Tyson. Over the last 10 years, healthcare has changed a lot. Not for the good, not for the bad. It's just changed. And the person that's going to be sitting there twiddling their thumbs, they're going to be in trouble. Whereas you got to be looking 5-10 years in advance. You got to be able to switch. And the people that are willing to do that and can do that, they're going to make it. The people that can't, they're going to be in trouble.
I think so. So I took you off track, and which I tend to do a lot. So I'm going to bring you back. So we were talking about where your career was going. So you thought at one stage chiropractor, doing biology, maybe a teacher, but then you went on and end up doing a master's.
Yes. Here's what happened. I graduated from A&M back in 2001, and I was very intrigued about anatomy. I wanted to be an anatomy teacher. So actually I went to the University of Texas in San Antonio, and they had a master's program in anatomy. And basically I dissected bodies with MD medical students for 2 years. And I wound up being a teacher, an anatomy teacher. And you may not know this, but the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio has a huge podiatry residency program. And one of the doctors that was there said, James, have you ever thought about being a podiatrist? And I said, no, not really. And so he introduced me to a famous podiatrist. You may or may not have heard of this man, but his name was Lawrence Harkless. He was the dean of the college in California, and I think he started a new podiatry college in Texas. He's a huge name in podiatry. I actually met him, and he actually talked me into applying to the Iowa school. And sure enough, I got accepted. I went there. Okay. I went there for 4 years. And then I did a residency with a man named Guido Laporta, which he's kind of on Mount Rushmore for podiatrists in the United States. Everybody knows who Guido Laporta is. So I had some really good mentors in the field of podiatry. And basically after that, I just decided, you know what? I don't want to work for a hospital. I want to work for me. Yeah. So I decided I'm going to start my own private practice. I'm going to start doing nursing homes. So believe it or not, I wrote letters to a bunch of nursing homes. Within 2 or 3 days, I had, nursing homes wanting me to come there. And at one time I covered 40 nursing homes. Wow. And, I was a busy man. And I just built my private practice from nothing. I literally started with a fold-up table and a fold-up chair.
How many years after finishing your residency and all that did you work for yourself? Did you end up working at a hospital at any time?
No, I wanted to do it from day one. Okay. And here's my advice for young people. The best time to start a private practice is 3 ingredients. You need to be young, you need to be poor, and you need to be single. If you're young, poor, and single, I was young. I had energy like crazy. I was poor. I didn't have a dime. I actually owed in student loan. And then, if you're single, you can spend all your time working on your practice. So if you're young, poor, and single, that is the absolute best time to start a private practice.
You have just given me the title of this episode. Because usually when I'm doing the podcast, I will, as the conversation goes on, I sort of I get an idea of, oh, this episode should be called such and such.
Sure.
But I sort of know some of the things we may talk about in a few minutes' time. And I think that's an awesome title. And I think that is great advice, young, poor, and single, because that's exactly what I did. I pretty much graduated and went straight out work for myself.
Sure.
I had no money. I had to beg, borrow, and steal to get a premises, borrow some money off different people, plead to the banks to give me some money. But because I knew I had the energy to do something.
Sure.
And I wasn't married and I didn't have any kids.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
it was like I could be there, and I'd be there at 6 o'clock in the morning because I could.
Sure.
And I would leave when I was so excited. I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to be at work, getting things going.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to look at it this way. If you're young, you have the physical stamina to do it. You can get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You can work 24/7. And that's basically what I did. If you're poor, there's only one way to go, and that's up.
Yeah.
If you're, let's say you own a business and you're making $150,000 a year. Let's say you're a car salesman and you're making $150,000 a year. Or you got to think long and hard to say, hey, I'm going to quit this job making $150,000 to go back to school and start out making nothing. So being poor is actually a huge advantage. You wouldn't think that, but it is. And at the same time, being single, I could pretty much devote every single hour of my being, into this podiatry practice. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been so successful. So
do you think some podiatrists, when they, like you said, they will graduate, they will work somewhere for a number of years, and because the pay is pretty good and it keeps going up each year, the ones that have been working somewhere 5, 7, 8 years, maybe 10, it's really hard to then go and do your own practice because you've got the security of the money.
Absolutely.
You're not poor. You may have gotten married. You've got children. And that's a big risk now to take to go and open up your own practice.
Absolutely it is. I mean, if you look at my building, I mean, this is, I can expand this office to 8,000 square feet. And believe it or not, this summer I was this close to buying another property to have a second location. That happened in time, but you can do that if you're the owner. If you're not the owner and you're working for the hospital, your job is to make them money. And there's nothing wrong with it. Tyson, a lot of people say, oh, you should start your own private practice. You should do this. You should do that. Tyson, you're a different breed. Okay. Rem Jackson is a different breed.
Yeah.
Peter Wishney's a different breed. If you look at these people, they're entrepreneurs. Not everybody's an entrepreneur. A lot of people say, should everybody go into private practice that graduates? No. Absolutely not. No. Absolutely not. That works for Tyson Franklin. That works for James Kent. That works for Peter Wishney, but it doesn't work for everybody. You have to figure out what you want to do. Part of your book was, in my opinion, it's how to be happy. And, if you're happy working for another doctor, that's great. If you're happy starting your own private practice, that's great. For me, I knew I would never be happy working for a hospital. So I think everybody has to look at themselves and say, what am I good at? What do I want to be when I grow up? And I knew when I grow up, I wanted to have my own private practice.
I think that's a really good point. And I've said that numerous times, that there's some people some podiatrists that just should not have their own practice. They would be making more money being a great podiatrist, and they'd be a happy podiatrist just working for somebody else. And it's funny you mentioned the happiness. That is going to be the title of my next book that I'm working on at the moment. Is called The Happy Podiatrist.
Yeah.
Because I just think it's an area that you need to find your happy place, whether it's, so for myself, I know that, like, I worked in a hospital for 6 months, didn't like it. And it just didn't suit me. I didn't like the hierarchy. I didn't like rules that made no sense.
Exactly.
I wanted to work harder. I would say, I can do this many people in a day. They go, no, don't do that. You make everybody else look bad. So I didn't like the restrictions. There's certain practices that I think I probably could work there for a little while, but it'd probably only be a short period of time before I'd be going, I just want to do my own thing. So I almost got a job working with somebody once.
Yeah, for me, my big goal at East Texas Foot and Ankle Centers, I'm to the point now where my house is pretty much paid off. I have no student loan debt. My cars are paid off. We have a hefty 401k plan. I owe nothing in the practice. For me, the only thing I owe for right now basically is my rental property. It has to be income producing rental property.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not about the money anymore. Okay, I do well. For me, it's about the happiness. It's about my family. It's about my kids. At this, I love in your book, and there's so many things that are good in your book, but one thing that really stuck out at me, you were talking about if something were to happen to your practice and, a fire would have burned it up or a catastrophe would have happened, you said now you have the knowledge to rebuild it again. And believe it or not, Tyson, that actually happened to me right before the coronavirus. We actually had a lightning strike hit my building that's less than 5 years old, and it had minor fire damage.
Yeah.
But I told my wife, I told my mom and my dad, I said, if that would have happened and it would have burned down everything in my practice, I know for a fact that I could rebuild it, and I could rebuild it better than I could before. Because you said this one time, you said you've spent a small fortune on building your career and going to different seminars and things like that. And I have too, through things like APPM and top practices. You're going to be fine. If something happened to your practice, you could rebuild it. If something happened to my practice, I could rebuild it. And again, it boils down to one thing: knowledge and your happiness.
Definitely. Even though I don't have a practice right now because I sold it, if I was to set up another practice tomorrow, it would be different to what I've done in the past, because I've learned so much over this period of time of having this break, that happiness to me, what you enjoy doing the most. And even though, and we were talking before I press record, that you just love all aspects of podiatry.
Everything.
Whereas there's other people that will say, "I know I don't like general podiatry." And I go, "Well, that's fine. If you don't like it, then don't do it. But if you do like it, and if you like wound care, if you like clipping toenails, then do it, and don't let anyone tell you that is not what you should be doing."
Sure. Well, here's one thing that young practitioners don't know. If I could give advice to young practitioners, and in America, we push residents to do surgery.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now in 2 words what makes money in podiatry. You know what it is? It's
not
primary
surgery.
It's primary care. It's primary care. It's doing the simple things: minimal incision in office surgery, clipping toenails, trimming calluses, giving cortisone injections, wound care, cast, cam boots, neuropathy treatments. It's that, and believe it or not, I'm just as happy doing that as I am doing a major surgery. I love it. I mean, you shouldn't listen to people that say you should just do surgery or you should just do this. Do what you want. I mean, I can truthfully say if I could do it all over again, I would do it again. I would.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, when I was asked why I did podiatry, and I posted this comment in the Podiatry Business Owners Club on Facebook a while ago, and there were a few of the comments were sort of like a little bit antagonistic towards me.
Yeah.
And I said, the best thing about podiatry is no one ever dies and everything can wait till tomorrow. And then I'll put, except for your marketing. But when I did podiatry, say in Australia, when we did podiatry in Australia, we don't have to do surgery. We do basic minus, we do nail surgery. But the reason I chose podiatry is I didn't want to get called out after hours.
Absolutely.
The chance of someone dying when they see me was going to be minimal or next to nothing. Mm-hmm. So I made that comment, and all of a sudden some people go, "Oh, but what about if somebody comes in and they mention some problem or some ischemic disease?" I go, "Well, yeah, that probably can happen. And someone could have a heart attack in your room, but I'm sure more people probably die at McDonald's than are going to die in your podiatry clinic." So I chose podiatry because of the low risk in podiatry when I went through.
Absolutely, 100%.
But if I wanted to become a surgeon, and wanted to go down that path, then I assume the risk is going to go up. But because I don't want that risk, I don't do it. I stay in the other parts of podiatry where there's less chance of something going wrong. But that's what works for me.
Well, here's what I tell a lot of students, and I've had a lot of students rotate through here, and I'm always super positive with them. And there's no reason to be negative because it's such an awesome profession. But I tell students, podiatry is the worst profession there is, and it's also the best profession there is. And there's only one person that can determine that. That's you. It's not me. It's Tyson Franklin. It's not Rem Jackson. It's you. And I tell students, I say, look, first you got to figure out where you want to live. Then you got to figure out what type of practice you want to be at. And then third, I tell them, close your eyes and think about what you want your life to be at 40. And then what do you want your life to be at 50, and then 60 and 70. And that's really the way I look at my career. I think I know where I'm going to be when I'm 50. I know where I'm going to be when I'm 60. There was a famous NFL running back. I'm not going to mention his name, but he actually quit the NFL, the National Football League.
Yeah.
And they said, I need to find myself. I don't know where I'm at. And Tyson, I've never really felt that way. I know where I've been. I know where I am now, and I know where I want to go. I mean, I even have my practice mapped out on, the number of associates, the number of locations, what I want to see, how many rental properties I want to own. I actually have a number of how many rental properties I want to own by the time I'm 50, by the time I'm 60, by the time I'm 70. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying in stone this is going to happen, but I'm constantly planning ahead and constantly adjusting things, because I know if I don't, and you don't have a goal, what are you doing? You're rolling around doing nothing, and you've got to have a goal, and I've got a goal. So, I tell young people this all the time. You got to make a goal, and here's the way I look at it. If you don't fulfill your goal, if it's a lofty goal and you don't fulfill it, is there anything wrong with that? No, not at all. You just didn't fulfill your goal. Okay. But if you don't have a goal at all, I guarantee you're not going to make it. So you got to have a goal.
Yeah. I think Zig Ziglar used to say it best. Are you a meaningful, specific, or wandering generality?
Sure.
So are you just waking up in the morning, putting your shoes on, getting dressed, going to work, seeing the patients, coming home, and if somebody said to you, how was your day? You don't know, because it was the same as the day before. There was no excitement, no enjoyment. And that's when they say, like, what do they say? A rut is just a grave with the ends kicked out. You're just doing the same thing day in, day out, going backwards and forwards. And next thing, 10 or 20 years goes past really, really fast.
Very, yeah. It is scary how fast this practice has. I mean, it seemed like yesterday I was in that fold-up table and fold-up chair. Interviewing First Lady to come in here. And, we basically started from nothing, and now we have a huge office, and we've got great staff and, wonderful patients. And right now I'm seeing about 85 to 115 patients a week.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I'm very happy with that number. I'm extremely happy. So what is my next goal? It's not to help me in my practice. It's to get the associate going. And then once they get going, then you're hiring another associate, and hopefully they'll wind up being partners someday. So you got to have a game plan. And that's why I tell all the associates or the people that I'm interviewing, you've got to have a goal. You got to pay that student loan off. You've got to have something. And not only do I talk to them about podiatry, I talk to them about their personal life. Do you want to be a mom? Do you want to be a dad? Do you want to own a home? Everybody has a dream. What is your dream? What do you want? Everybody has that. Bring that out of them. Make them, want to tell you about their dreams. And then not only listen to what they're saying, try to make that happy for them. One wise guy said, if you want something in life, you need to you need to figure out how to get other people what they want.
Yeah,
If
that
you
was Zig Ziglar.
think about what they want, what their needs are, you're going to get what you want. So first you need to figure out what everybody else wants, and then you can get what you want. So
I think that was another Zig Ziglar, because I love Zig Ziglar. He was like my favorite all-time motivational speaker, and never got to see him live, unfortunately. But I have chatted to his son over the social media at different times, which is strange. But yeah, I think he used to say, if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll have everything that you want.
100% agree.
But it's also, I know some people, when it comes to setting goals, they find it really hard. They go, I don't know what I want. And I say, if you don't know what you want, then write a list of all the things you don't want.
Yeah.
And then do the opposite. So get a big piece of paper and write down, these are all the things I don't want. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to have a mortgage. So therefore, it helps you clarify what you do want. And then it's just putting the things in place. And it takes time. And you've got to be patient.
It does. And that's one thing I can get into. Rem talks about things like pillars of marketing and, 4 pillars of marketing. And he gets into talk about marketing. And, sometimes people can look at that and they say, okay, all you have to do is the 4 pillars of marketing, or all you have to do is this or that.
Yeah.
I am a firm believer in work. People that work hard always wind up doing well. Just nearly always, not always the case, but just 99% of the I don't think that there's a magic bullet in podiatry.
No.
Tyson, the first 5 years of my practice, I did not take any time off. I kind of regret to say that, but it is true. For the first 5 or 6 years of my practice, I did not take any time off. That's not good. Don't listen to James Kent on that. You need to take some time off.
I did exactly the same thing. So don't listen to me on that either.
You know what, Tyson? I don't regret that. Some people say, oh, you want to take some time off. I enjoyed it. I wanted to be here. I wanted to develop. I love talking to the architect, on my building. I love talking to the builder. I loved designing my own operating room. I love buying equipment, getting on eBay and trying to see if you can get a good deal on a podiatry chair. It's not just seeing the patients. I love all parts of it. So, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, you need to take time off and all that. Yeah, I think you do. But for me, it certainly worked for me not taking any time off. I enjoyed my job so much. I didn't want to take time off. That ought to tell you something about it. If you don't want to take time off because you like your job so much, you must be picking the right profession. And I'm the same way with my real estate, with my properties. I love managing the real estate. We just put on 4 brand new roofs on my duplexes. I enjoyed that. I love seeing it. So you got to work. That's the bottom line.
I definitely agree. You've got, you can work really hard, and not just because you work really hard doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful, or you're going to be successful, whatever success means. But it's working hard and working smart and hanging around the right people and staying positive and working on the 4 pillars or 6 pillars that I have in my book. It's doing the marketing, it's managing people, it's attending events, but attending the right events that are going to inspire you to be a better podiatrist, a better business owner, not just turn up to an event because you're going to learn another way to treat plantar fasciitis. There's more to it than just becoming a great technician. There's so many other aspects. But I think when it comes to just developing a career, if you don't want to own your own business, you can still be a very successful podiatrist and prosper by being a fantastic employee.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, two of my best friends in podiatry, one's employed by a multi-specialty group, the other one's employed by a hospital. Yeah. They think totally different than me. I'm not better or worse than them. I just think different. but there's room in podiatry for everybody.
Yeah.
Again, Tyson, I've said this 10 times on this podcast. I love my job. I'm 44. I cannot wait to see what the next 10 years are in store for me in the field of podiatry. You know, I mean, there's a podiatrist that trained me back in West Texas. You know, when I was interested in podiatry college, his name was Brad Glass. He was head of the Texas Podiatric Medical Association. He was a legend for the state of Texas. And he said, you know, it was a rocket ride for me. Podiatry was a rocket ride for me. I loved podiatry. He said it is the most secret profession you can get into, and I don't see why. I mean, gosh, I'm on TV. I mean, I have TV ads. I have a great website. I get on YouTube. I try to promote it as best as I can, because and this is off the record, but I would much rather be a podiatrist than an MD.
Yeah.
I mean, I would much rather look at feet than be an MD. It's for me, it's more fun.
I think what we do, you know, like in the average podiatry clinic, someone's going to walk in and you can have a rough guess. It's possibly going to be a foot or ankle problem, just off the top of your head. You're an MD sitting in your clinic and some person comes walking in. You have no idea what you're about to be faced with. And the thought of having to put on a rubber glove and have someone bend over does not excite me. So, yeah, well, that's one thing I can never understand when someone says, who wants to be a proctologist? And someone actually puts a hand up. And I'm like, no, I would have moved to the back of the line for that one. But yeah, I think what we do, how we help people, the way that we can change people's lives, give them back activity. As Peter Wishney says, we give people back their lives. We don't just stop foot pain. Sure. I think it's amazing. Hey, one thing I wanted to touch on too.
Sure.
You brought it up, was your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So I went and had a look at it. You got over 12,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel.
Yeah. Yeah. I did it for educational purposes. Here's what I tell, you know, associates that are looking for a job. Look at my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
If this is the kind of stuff you want to do for a living, you know, you might be a candidate for a job here. This is the kind of stuff that I love doing. I mean, anything from a small toe amputation to an ingrown toenail to how to put on a cast.
Your YouTube channel is really cool. I've seen some where they'll be talking about just one particular thing, and that's all they talk about. It might be an ingrown toenail, and there's 55 videos on ingrown toenails. Whereas when I looked at yours, you're showing everything from a bunion surgery to removing a toe. I think one of your videos has like 2.5 million views.
Yeah.
So, out of curiosity, why is the YouTube channel Tyler Foot Clinic?
Well, because that's my web. I'm in the city of Tyler, Texas.
Okay.
So Tyler Foot Clinic. I think East Texas Foot and Ankle Centers was too long for that, so I had to put Tyler Foot Clinic there. So Tyler Foot Clinic is actually my website.
Okay, so I will put a link in the show notes. So if anyone wants to go and check it out, but if you don't want to go look at the show notes, it's TYLER Foot Clinic. So check that out on YouTube.
Right.
There are some really, really cool videos on there, and they're just so, how can I put it? They're real. Yeah, you're not trying too hard. Yeah. You haven't got flashy graphics. You don't have big introduction. It is just you, somebody holding I would say probably an iPhone or something like that during the recording.
Yeah.
And you're not worrying about big microphones. It is just so raw. Yet a lot of your videos have got thousands, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views. So obviously people are watching them. Yeah.
I don't know how many hits I have. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 million hits. I don't even know, 10 million hits. I have a couple of million hits. And of course I have a couple of thousand subscribers. And for me, that's one thing that frustrates me about podiatry is people don't know what podiatry is.
Yeah.
So people want to know, okay, what do you do? I guarantee you they've said this to you. Tyson, what do you do for a living? They said that to me. What do you do for a living? What is podiatry? If you want to see what I do for a living, check out my YouTube channels, from a nerve biopsy to something simple like a plantar fascia release,
Yeah.
to a small cortisone injection inside of a toe. If you want to see what I do for a living, pretty much watch my YouTube channels, and that's bread and butter podiatry, and I love it, every aspect of it.
And I think people, I've chatted to a few people lately, and they've said, "Oh, people in my area don't understand what podiatry is, or our profession doesn't promote it enough." And I think if everybody just promoted a little bit more themselves, then everybody else would know what it is.
Sure.
So it's like a group effort. Everybody needs to have a YouTube channel and share some information. And because people are out there searching for information. I did a strapping video 5 years ago, and it goes for, I think, 90 seconds. It was just how to strap up your heel for heel pain. It was really simple. I didn't even have, all you see is me from the neck down, so you wouldn't know it's me. And I did the strapping video, never really gave it too much thought. Now, I shot it just before I sold my clinic, but the video still stayed there on my YouTube channel. And it's had 78,000 views.
Yeah.
And you go, so people are searching heel pain or how do I strap my heels? So podiatry clinics need to be creating that type of information, creating a YouTube channel, putting it out there. And if you don't like being on video, then just cut your head off so you're not seen.
Sure. And you look at a guy like me, I've had people travel literally from Houston. I've had people travel from South Texas. I've had people from Oklahoma, from Louisiana come here because they said, I see how you do a minimally invasive hammer toe. Yeah. I don't want to go anesthesia. I like it that you have your own operating room there. I like it that you have your own nitrous gas there. I can do it at the fraction of the cost of what the hospital would charge. That's actually attracted a lot of patients because of that, that I would have never had if I didn't have a YouTube channel.
Yeah. So what you've done, you've shown them some behind the scenes type things of what happened in your business. So they get to watch that, and straight away they get to know, like, and trust you over a period of time of watching these videos. So therefore, when they come and see you, they feel like they already know you. It's like watching a TV show and seeing an actor for so many years. You feel like you know that actor. Whereas some podiatrists will go, oh, they're struggling to get patients to come to them because they don't put the information out there. So they've just got to create content. Doesn't need to be Hollywood production style, and just get it out there.
Yeah. I mean, simple iPhone, simple videos. I think to a certain extent that makes you look more real. Yeah. A lot of doctors like to come across as something that they're not. I don't want to be that way. I make mistakes. I'm certainly not perfect. I think people can live with a person that makes mistakes. But I don't think people can live with other people that try to make themselves something that they're not.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I tried to do with my videos. If you want to see how to do a bunion surgery or how to do a plantar fascia release or an ingrown toenail, this is pretty much how I do them. Now you can decide whether you want me to do it or not, but you can look at it and say, hey, I think I like this guy. I don't think I like this guy. I want to move on to the next guy. That's okay with me. It's fine with me, but they need to know what's going on. I look patients in the eye and I'll tell them this. Now you can go to the doctor across the street or wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
I tell patients, if I'm going to do a minimally invasive surgery, you can have quite a bit of pain for 2 weeks. You can have moderate pain for 2 months. You can have mild pain for 2 months after that. And you can have swelling for 6 months to a year. Very few doctors will say that, but everybody knows that's true. You can have swelling for 6 months to a year, and sometimes even 2 years. But sometimes they're a little bit shocked when I tell them that, but I would rather tell them that in the beginning and say, watch my video, get a second opinion. And what usually happens, they're going to wind up coming back to you in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So I was just looking at the time before we finish up.
Sure.
What's your final tip? So like this has been really good. It's I've taken so much away from this. I love it when I finish the podcast as we're getting towards the end, and I'm all fired up. So I know it's been a really, really good conversation. So if somebody is listening to this now, they bumped into James Kent, that you're sitting at a bus stop. They sat next to you. They said, "Oh, you're James. I heard you on the Podiatry Legends podcast, my favorite podcast, of course." And what's the one tip you would give them as they head into work on a Monday morning?
And it's not just in Tyson. Let me ask you. It's not a podiatrist. It can be anybody, correct?
Could be anybody.
Okay. You're going to think I'm crazy, but this is the number one book that I recommend for everybody. As a matter of fact, I actually have this book. And I bought hundreds of copies to give to patients and people. It's this book right here. It's called The Millionaire Next Door. I don't know if you've read it, but I highly recommend. I give this book to young kids all the time. And basically it talks about millionaires and how they live, how they act. Believe it or not, 20% of millionaires live in a mobile home. The average millionaire drives a Ford F-150. If you look at my house, okay, my house is around 1,400 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's a very simple house. It's easily affordable. What I drive simple cars. If you look at my rental property, very simple, but very effective rentals. If I could tell anybody advice to live on, I would tell them, please read The Millionaire Next Door. Mary Beth Crane, I'm sure you know Mary Beth. Yeah. She says the same thing. Buy The Millionaire Next Door. You can get you a copy on Amazon for $2.50. It will change your life. As a matter of fact, I read it every 6 months. I put, when I make $1, I don't really care about buying a fancy car or buying a fancy house or a fancy thingamajig. For me, I told myself when I started this business, I wanted to be rich.
Yeah.
What is your definition of rich? Is it owning $1 million home? Is it owning $1 million car? What is it? For me, I wanted some financial independence. And
definitely.
And if you want to learn how to be rich, read The Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah, well, I was given that book, must be 15 years ago. Somebody gave me that book. And and I remember reading it, and it was talking about the average millionaire will eat meat and potatoes at night, not lobster. And some people have it in their head that as they're making money, I think some people, they make really good money and they actually spend a lot of money at the same time. So in the end, they're actually taking away from that financial security they may have in the future, or they've got to work much longer because they're so busy trying to impress everybody. And I remember many years ago, the house I'm in now, and a lot of our friends, they'll come around our house and they love our place because it's just a cool house. Oh, I think it's a cool house. Yeah, nice pool area. I've got a nice bar. Yeah, we've got our music and all that set up, and it's a nice house. But I remember having this young podiatrist who just started working with us. I said, "Oh, do you want to come around for a barbecue?" So he came around, and we're sitting out in the back patio area, and we're just watching TV. And he's had this weird look on his face. And I said, "What's up?" He goes, "I thought your house would have been bigger."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, okay. Thanks, I suppose. I don't know. I didn't know if I was supposed to be insulted or..." And then he left that night, and I went, "That's a really weird comment. He just expected my house to be so much bigger." And I'm going, "But I love my house. My house is cool." Yeah. So it's one of those things where they think, oh, because you're doing well, you must have this mansion to actually show off what you've actually got.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, if I'm going to buy something, it's going to be on there's only, in my opinion, okay, and I've got everything I want and more. I'm very content with my life right now. The only debt I will go into from the rest of my life is not for a home, is not for a car. It's either going to be income producing real estate or land.
Yeah.
That's the only two things I will go in debt for.
Yeah. And I always talk about, I had a young podiatrist who was setting up a practice, and when they were setting up, I was looking at their finance and said, "You're spending too much money." They said, what do you
Sure.
mean? I said, well, you don't need to have $400 chairs sitting in the reception area. Yes, they look fantastic, but I tell you, $100 chair will be fine. And they totally blew all their money because they just tried to make everything look so much better than what it was. And they could have saved so much money. And they did end up going bankrupt. Yeah. And I sat there just shaking my head going, I warned you week one. That's what you were headed that way because you were overspending so much money. And they were putting a lot of this on credit cards with 20% interest. It was just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. You know this very well, Tyson. Quality and price lots of times has no relation.
Yeah.
Quality and price have no relation. You can do a quality hammertoe surgery in an office setting that's just as good or better than at the hospital that would cost literally 1/10 of the price.
Yeah.
A Toyota Corolla is a fantastic car, a reliable car, much more reliable than something like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. And so people have this misconception, if it costs more, it must be better. That is absolutely 100% false. Quality and price do not correlate lots of times.
So I think it's good that we've spoken a little bit about a bit of financial advice for younger podiatrists coming through too. It's just, I always think, live within your means, do not overspend. And when you want something, it's like when we bought the land that this house went onto, we didn't borrow it. We paid cash for it. We saved the money up and we just paid for it. And the last car that I bought, actually my car's about 10 years old now, but when I bought the car, we just paid cash for it because I don't like going into debt on things that are not actually making money. So, and I always talk about if you've got, say, $10,000 or $20,000 there, should you have that sitting in the bank, or could you buy a piece of equipment and bring it into your practice? And what's the return you'll get on that piece of equipment? And sometimes you might get 8% in the bank, but you're going to get a 200% return by investing in a piece of equipment. So it's, as you're spending your money, think about what's the best return for that money.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying you're going to get 8% in the bank. I don't know of any bank that gives 8%. I know. You're lucky to get 1.0025%.
Yeah.
So you got to look at what makes money. What's an income producer? And another point I'd like to make is I ask students this all the time, and it's appalling to me that they don't know what I'm talking about. And I asked them, I said, you know what an amortization schedule is? And they're like, what is that? And I said, well, let's say if you're $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in student loan debt. The bottom line is if you've got 5% interest on that on a 30-year note, you don't owe $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 for it. You owe the principal on it and the interest on it. So look at somebody's debt and they say, hey, I'm $300,000 in debt. Actually, you're not. You're $600,000 in debt. Unless you start making extra payments, that 30-year note, you're going to wind up paying so much more on that interest. And you would not believe how many students look at me like a deer in the headlights and don't know what that means. A simple amortization schedule on a house or a car or a student loan. And if they looked at that, they would puke. They would say, oh my goodness, I'm actually going to pay $250,000 over a 30-year period on student loan debt. Actually, you are.
Yeah, actually, so the idea is you pay it off.
Yeah, you pay it off. Pay it off as soon as you can. And here's another piece of advice. This isn't cool. This isn't glamorous, but you know what? When I graduated from residency for 2 years, I actually lived with my parents. That's how many doctors do you know that have 4 college degrees and actually live with their parents? I was making triple and quadruple payments on my student loan. I annihilated my student loan. I didn't hardly pay any interest on my student loan at all.
It was funny. All. Yeah. What was funny is I left home when I was 26. I'd finished podiatry. I moved back home again. And I remember having a discussion with my mum one night. And she go, "When are you going to leave?" I went, "I enjoy being at home." And she's going, you just got to leave. You're 26 years of age. And my older brother was there, and he goes, "Yeah, when are you going to leave?" I said, "You're 29. And he was a dentist. He goes, "No, but it's just," and we just never, we saved money. We saved money being at home.
You know what? My parents never looked at me and said, you should leave. Because they knew what I was doing with my finances. They knew I was making a triple payment, a quadruple payment on that. They saw what I was doing, and they saw that I was annihilating the principal and the interest. They saw. I would talk with my parents about finances and say, "Look, this is how much we made this month.
Yeah,
This is how I'm paying on my student loan." They were all for it. They realized the quickest way out of trash debt, what I call trash debt, auto debt, home debt, student loan debt, credit card debt, all the garbage debt. If you can get that out of the way, you're okay. You're doing great. Like for example, my office. Yes, I do owe on my office, but that's an appreciating asset.
Oh yeah.
I bought my land for $8 a square foot. Okay. I bought it 10 years ago. No, not 10 years ago, 8 years ago. I bought it for $8 a square foot. The other day, somebody said down the street, the same type of land, they want $23 a square foot. It's gone up threefold, basically, since I bought the land. That's not trash debt. Yeah. It's the brand new Corvette or the brand new Porsche, that you bought for 8% interest for 48 months. That's going to go down in value. You got to be, if you're going to get into debt, please, please, please try to keep the student loan debt to a minimum. Try to keep the home loan to a minimum. Try to keep the credit card debt, the cars down to a minimum. I mean, if you're going to have debt, it better be something that's going to appreciate in value.
Yeah. So it's all about debt management, asset management, income producing assets. And these are part of going right back to what we spoke about earlier, because I'm just looking at time. I do have to finish up in a sec. Was just the when you're talking about setting your goals and what is it that you want, and if you've got a particular goal in the future, you have to control your finances and all that to achieve those goals.
100%.
Otherwise you won't. So James, I want to thank you for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast, sharing all your wisdom. Like I said, I most times I don't really know where the conversation is going to go until we start. So This has been really good. And I love that tip too. Start young, poor, and single. And if at the moment you're not young, you're not poor, and you're not single, then just keep going anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So James, thank you very much.
I'm just as excited about my podiatry practice that I was back in 2010. I can truthfully. A lot of doctors can't say that. They can't say, you know what? I'm just as fired up about my practice back when I started. Believe it or not, I think I'm even more fired up because I've made every mistake you can possibly make.
Me too. Okay, so James, thank you very much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll talk again in the not too distant future, and I'll see you one day when I'm back over in the States.
You bet. Thank you, Tyson. You're doing wonderful.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. All right, bye-bye.